President Betts, and thank you for Sarah for having me, for finding us over. I work with the Livermore Hindu Temple, which is up in Springtown, as a speaker to local events, and so I usually get sent to all these places. So I'm very happy to be here to talk to you about Hinduism. So this is up and running. All right, so I have a lot of slides. I'm not going to do a lot of slideware. I want to keep this interactive, so I'll ask you a few questions to begin with, and then we'll get into a quick introduction to Hinduism. Before I ask you a question, are there questions that you would like to have addressed today as you get into it? Is there something that you really want to ask? Yes, ma'am.
What's Diwali?
What is Diwali? Thank you. Great question. I'll answer that. Yes.
How does Livermore get chosen?
Hold your tongue.
Say that again?
How did Livermore?
That's an amazing story, backstory. I'll tell you that as well. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
You know what the population is of
Hindus
Indians in the area of Livermore?
in Livermore, not specifically in the Bay Area proper, about 200, 250,000. Sizable number. Some cities, it's about 10%, 11% of the population. Some cities, a little bit more or less. But that's the general number. Yeah. So before we begin, I'd like you to join me just sitting comfortably. We'll just bring our attention inward. Sit comfortably if you're sitting on a chair, as you all are. Put your feet on the floor, perfect contact. So not raised up on the haunches, just full foot contact. You can close your eyes. Sit up straight with the back straight but not stiff. The back, neck, and head are in a straight line. Now close your eyes gently. Relax the expression on the face. Bring a gentle smile to your face and hold the smile for the next few breaths. Let the tongue become heavy, fall down to the bottom of the mouth. Let that gentle smile travel in with your breath to the back of the throat, into the chest, and into the belly. Let that smile fill your heart and then radiate out from your heart, filling the body and then radiating out from your body, filling this entire room, and then that smile now permeates through all of Livermore Valley and then out into the country at large, bringing with it peace. Breathe into the belly and let the belly expand. As you exhale, let go. Let go of your thoughts. Let go of your preoccupations. Breathing into the belly, let the belly expand. As you exhale, let everything go. Feel a sense of relief sweeping through the body. That smile still radiating out and reflecting back into yourself. All's well with the world. Everything is just as it is, as it should be. You're going to begin to come out gently. Blink your eyes open. Don't just open them suddenly. Blink your eyes open. Namaskar and welcome to this conversation. I want to ask you a question. Have you heard the statement, with great power comes responsibility? Why do you remember this? Spider-Man. What about Spider-Man? Well done. Why not?
You were right to
All right. So can you work a couple of slides down? The question, one more. Yeah, that's it. Okay, great. Now you remember it on account of Spider-Man and his Uncle Ben, who dies suddenly, saying these very famous last words. But we do what it says. With great power does come great responsibility and accountability. Of course, today is election day, and much great power will move one way or another, but also much great responsibility. This statement, the fact that something as simple and profound as with great power comes great responsibility, is encased in some sort of a story, tells us something. I could ask you to fill out other proverbs or other sayings. Half of you might remember, half of you may not. But this one you remember on account of Spider-Man. And that is one of the great truths that Hinduism, it's been around for thousands of years. We don't know exactly when it started. But the great truth is that stories have tremendous power. They travel over space and time. And stories can be used to encase leadership values to a society and what it means to live, what it means to have priorities in life and make choices. And so stories are very important. And so why this regular story? Why not epics? I'm going to see if I can get the next slide up. Yeah, okay. So epics and stories are fruits whose seeds are, I'm going to read this, germinate as the view of the world. And so a lot of these epics and stories in the Indian tradition are, you may call them mythologies, you might call them histories. What matters is the message itself. Thank you, I appreciate that. What matters is the message itself, which is, in this case, this question that you asked me was, what is Diwali? You asked me what Diwali is, I'll tell you what Diwali is. Yeah, we can move on. Okay. And in order to tell you that, there's a couple of big stories associated with the Indian Festival of Lights. Diwali, it was celebrated last week, and it's celebrated, it's a luni-solar calendar Hindus have, so it's a different day of the year depending on where the moon and sun are. But this year it was actually the day of Halloween, which was fun because you had people dressed in Indian type attire, giving candy to ghosts and ghouls visiting them. So it was interesting. The last time it happened was around 20 years ago. I remember that because I carved the pumpkin and then lit lamps. So Diwali is a festival of lights, and it celebrates two stories, one of which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about, just for context, and hopefully it'll give you a sense of what the Hindu tradition is about. Many thousands of years ago, society was at a particular place where moral standards and character seemed to be on the decline. And so this sage sitting in his retreat center, the ashram, he thinks about this question: how may I raise the standard of the society? How may I raise the character of the society? As he is thinking about it, an astral visitor from visits him, and he says, you may check in on this young man just south of where you are and see what he's about. And he tells him the story. And that story is the story of Ram. And behind you on this, you have this thing. When we have choices, we have two choices that we usually have to make. A choice that is good and a choice that is pleasant. And what's good may not necessarily be the pleasant one. What may be pleasant is comfortable, convenient. It seems easy to make. But what's good might come at a cost. It might be good for the society, but not necessarily me, but I still need to do it. And a test of character is this: do you make the good choice or the pleasant choice? And that is the choice that Ram, this young prince at the time, is faced with repeatedly in the entire story. And so it's a very touching, very moving story about a young prince who's about to be made king by his father, but then on account of a promise his father has made to one of his wives, Ram is then sent off to the forest and not being made king. His younger brother is made king. And then he goes to the forest, lives there for 13 years. His wife and brother accompany him, one of his brothers, and his wife is then kidnapped. And then he has to go find a troop of wild people, and then with their help, go and rescue his wife and bring her back. And the day he returns back to his kingdom, eventually, is celebrated as Diwali. And so that the city then lights up lamps on the street and welcomes him back. And that's one of the stories with Diwali, which is we welcome him back home. This year was a very special year for the Hindus for a simple reason. So Ram's story, okay, so let's just go click through it again. So it's an enduring epic. It's very popular, not just in India, but the entire region. All of Southeast Asia, you're going to have the story of Ramayana told in many different ways because it's a very moving, very engrossing epic tale. But the capability in the Hindu tradition is epic tales usually hide a lot of morals and values and virtues into the characters. These tales are epic because they're extremely long. Two major epics in the Hindu tradition, they're extremely long, and because they're long, they have a lot of room for conversation. And because the right thing to do at any given point of time, the Hindus have come to conclude, cannot be boiled down to something you can write on 1 or 2 sheets of paper. It's very subtle. And because it's subtle, you need to see it from different perspectives and angles. The myriad conversations in an model that those changes or those distinctions or those different contexts in which you might face a problem. So a husband might be talking to a wife, or a washerman's talking to his wife being overheard by the king, or a man talking to a crane, and the crane bird. All of these are ways to engage in conversation about what is the right thing to do. And so you get to hear all of these. None of these are rules of thumb that you say, okay, you can take it down on one hand or two hands and that's it, off to the races. No, it's very nuanced. And that's why there's thousands of different conversations inside these epics. And that's what makes them rich. You could take any part of the text and read it, and it would have something of interest that comes through with it. All right, so the Ramayana story is interesting because it goes through this series of the stamps that he put out a few years ago. But Ram, whose story we separate, who we celebrate, Ramayana is the story of Ram. And so Ram is the ideal student, the ideal son, the ideal husband, the ideal king. What makes him ideal? In almost all the cases that you see through his story, is he's faced with a choice. And he invariably, at great cost to himself, makes the good choice, not the pleasant choice. He makes the hard choices because that's what he needs to do, because of the roles he's having to discharge as a son, as a husband, as a king, never for himself. And that defines his character. And this story is being told contemporaneously at the same time. When it's being written at the same time as he's alive. It's being told as a way of telling the citizenry that this is the true character of a man, which is you make the hard choices, not the easy choices. And that's why he's a beloved character. Even in the story as it's being told, he is crying as he's making these choices because they're not easy. But he's making them because it's what he has to do. And so it's a really fascinating, moving story. And of course, what would Ram do is the question being asked over here. If you go back up one slide. So what would Ram do? As they say here, as the bumper car sticker says. So what would Ram do is a question that is theoretically being asked of anyone who hears the story, which is, are you making the easy choice or the hard choice? Now, the truth itself is very complex. I don't want you to read this slide. Don't worry about all the slideware. But the important thing to know is that the truth itself, for the light thing over here, like the black hole at the center of the galaxy, which holds the entire galaxy together, truth itself can be a capital T truth, which is always true forever, without any context. Or it could be small t truth, which is it's true today. For example, today is Tuesday. That's true for today. It's not true tomorrow because tomorrow is not Tuesday. Wouldn't be a good day. Truth can come in paradoxical shapes and sizes. What's true in the physics class is not true in the biology class. Why is a leaf green? The right answer can vary depending on context. And the Hindu tradition is designed to take in these paradoxes entirely. It's designed not to whittle down these paradoxes into simple rules of thumb, so to speak. And so it's a very complex religion, and it appears so by design because it's designed to be paradoxical. You might think that Hindus have hundreds of gods or thousands of gods or millions of gods, and for election day like today, you might need all of them. But in general, that's not actually true. We have ways of understanding divinity that are myriad and can be varied, but our sense is not only that there is one God. In fact, we go beyond that. We say there is nothing but God. Everything is inside of God and acting as God. We are essentially being moved by His energy or her energy, depending on which flavor or which gender of God you might choose. The point is that the Hindus are a very complex religion, cannot be boiled down. And so when I hold temple visits, which I host once a quarter, typically some group I'd be hosting, I invite you to join today. It's a feast for the senses and can be overwhelming at times because there's a lot going on. The temple itself has a lot going on. We'll move on. Okay, just go back a little bit. One second, sorry. The core sense of the whole tradition, again, is this. The Hindu tradition, in its entire religiosity, our gods, our epics, the entire thing, it comes down to one simple question on the bottom left, on the top left, which is if you go to the Costco down the street, quite literally, and buy those avocados, you buy them and it's a legal weapon because you could hit people with that avocado and they'd be damaged, severely dented for sure. But then give or take a few weeks, they'll ripen. And the question is, do they contain a Bluetooth signal inside that ripens the avocado or Wi-Fi or something on the internet that tells them, okay, this is about time? No, we just ripen because that's the way it's their nature, right? So the question is, and so the early Hindus, way back when the texts or the poems we have from the earliest poems that we have are not about the nature of God or who the God is or what their secret names are. It's simply, these are people that are just like us saying, what is the source of this order? Why is it that the avocado bought from Costco ripens in a few weeks or by itself? There must be some order. What is that order? And through that sense that there is an order, there is a repetition, a pattern of interaction in the universe. They arrived from first principles and what makes a good society, what makes a good person, what makes a good life. All those questions were asked and answered, and eventually the vast spectrum of things that you now know as Hinduism is included in the answering of that question. Our names of God, the early names of God that are written out there, or the divinity, God is a modern word, they are forgotten in time in the sense that modern Hindus don't read them and say, okay, I know who this divinity is. Those names have changed over time, many of them. But the sense remains the same, that there is order in the world. And that order works in a somewhat predictable manner, but not entirely predictable. And that's what makes the world living and interesting and vibrant. All right, so Rita is so if you know the word rhythm, by the way, it's the same word as Rita in the previous slide. We'll skip that, okay. Okay, now go back. All right, so the Diwali, this is good, yeah, this is good. So Diwali is a community festival. We wear nice clothes, we give gifts. It's the darkest night of the year, essentially, because the sun, it's the darkest way, it's the moonless night, so it's new moon. There's no moon outside, and the sun has begun its southward journey. So it's halfway south, and by December 21st, it would reach its southmost point and then start coming back up. So it's the dark night of the year, and so Halloween is also incidentally at the same time for incidentally similar reasons. But I won't get into that, too much history into that. But the point is, we come together, we light lamps, we pray to the goddess of wealth, which is the other story associated with Diwali. And then, what does it say? And then there's a lot of interesting stories. There's a lot of sweets that you wear, so your blood glucose level definitely shoots up through the roof. And so that happened last week. It's always a very fun time in the Hindu tradition. This is entire winter period, starting fall, is filled with festivals. Every other week there's something interesting. 20 days preceding that, I was in India, and there's a 9 nights of the Mother Goddess, which happens every quarter, but this quarter is the most special. And I was in the city where the entire city is lit up, and there's the crowds just thronging, millions of people just walking around the city, going from one tent to another. It's just so much fun. All right, so there's a lot of festivity. Now, this year marked a special time for the Hindus because the temple at Ayodhya, the city where Ram ruled, the temple there had been broken down 500 years ago by invaders. And demolition has long been a form of subjugation. And so demolition of Hindu temples also incidentally contain a lot of community wealth. They are pre-banking, so the wealth of the society goes into the temples. They have Indian temples would have lots of gold inside those basements. And if you're a would-be marauder, you will hear this from me. So, but there's one temple in South India they haven't even seen all the basements. They looked into the two, and they estimate there's probably $1 trillion of gold inside and there. But again, don't go looking. But,
Me more.
yeah, okay, totally. I'm wrapping up. Okay, so the point is the temple was broken down, but then through it, and we'll go swiftly, through a 120-year-old lawsuit. The Hindus went to court. We didn't go out rioting or anything. We went to court and we actually fought a lawsuit. And the interesting thing that you need to know is that in Indian law, deities are people too. So that's the interesting part. The case was decided that once a deity inhabits a temple, they are said to inhabit that in a baby child form, and they are said to inhabit that forever. That's just Indian law. And so that's why they were able to establish that this temple has a continuity over long periods of time, and that it therefore can be restored, and the temple was restored. Next slide, and so on. Are Hindus idol worshippers? This is not a pipe, it's a representation of a pipe. In the same way, Hindus are not idol worshippers. We have a process of inviting the divine. Someone mentioned hurricanes. You mentioned hurricanes, sir, right? Hurricanes have names. Do the hurricanes care to have names? They don't care to have names. They have names because we'd like to call them something, so we know if Edna is coming or something else is coming. It's just convenient for us. We invite the divinity into physical form because can I embrace the universe? Can I implore the universe? Can I tell the universe I love the universe? It's very hard to do for us humans. So we invite them into a physical form through a very formal process of invitation. And then they are said to inhabit those forms. And then we must treat them as living forms, and which is what the temple is doing. We wake them up, we bathe them, we give them food, we give them a nap, we put them to sleep in the night. They're exactly like they're living in their homes. That's what's happening in the temple. Hindus don't all go to the temple. You're not required to go to the temple. Hindus go to any temple. And it's a question because I do a lot of interfaith things. I was asked this question several times. I'm wrapping up. In the first 3 years of me doing interfaith, they asked me, what temple do you go to? And I named a temple. And I didn't realize that question was more loaded. I didn't understand what the question meant. Hindus go to every temple. Hindus go to any sacred place and consider it sacred. I've done talks at churches, at mosques, and my intention is always to take the shoe out because Hindus don't take shoes into sacred places. Your sacred place is my sacred place as well for the same reason, which is you consider it divine, and so should I. So that's the story. There is a lot of sweetness to devotion. You see a lot of interesting, loving, singing, chanting going on in the Hindu tradition, and that goes on. And when we will keep going more, and then a lot of lighting of lamps. So that's the Hindu tradition, and it's a long, continuously evolving, continuously moving tradition, very closely linked to nature, very closely linked to our inner and outer nature, and presenting itself in myriad and very confusing sometimes forms, but at its core, there's a sweetness. At its core is an eternal search for truth. And that is my introduction to Hinduism.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Can you stick around for questions?
Sure, yeah, I'll be happy to take questions.
This is olive oil from Alavito.
Oh, thank you.
Our members, thank you
Thank you.
very much. And with that,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
got to go to all these clubs and visit, and I got to go Sunday night to a Diwali celebration at Silicon Andhra.
Oh,
because
love-
they have their own club.
Yeah.
It was amazing, the singing, everybody singing a lot, everybody dressed in their fanciest saris, the dancing, and this was a really different Rotary meeting. But so joyous, and the way we started the meeting was not just by the bell, but because it was inside a building, you had to do the artificial lights, and so we lit the artificial
The lamps,
lights.
yeah.
I took off my shoes to stand on the stage, so any pictures of Jill are gonna be with her socks, and I hope there are no more holes. But it was such a marvelous celebration. Thank you for all of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think to end the meeting, it was just wonderful. Thank you for getting the speaker. We will, for those of you that would like to go to the temple, we